The Sony a7 IV has been out for a few days now, and it's getting mixed reviews. So is it a solid update and likely to make a7 III owners upgrade? And how does it compare to what Nikon and Canon have to offer? Will it convert more people over to Sony, just like its predecessor? If you're in the market for a sub $2,500 camera, I'll try and help you decide. Let's look into that. Sony had the advantage of being ahead in mirrorless technology, and they're certainly capable of retaining that top position. The tech they have in the A1 and the A7S III shows what Sony can do, but not everyone can afford those cameras, so like all manufacturers, Sony need to offer cameras to suit all budgets. When the a7 III was released, Sony made a conscious effort to win over Nikon and Canon owners to their ecosystem. And that camera had it all. Sony's primary objective was to win over Canon and Nikon owners who were wavering about moving to mirrorless cameras. With the features in their own cameras they couldn't hope to match. This strategy proved very successful for Sony, with many jumping to their brand. However, times have changed. There's no compelling reason to change brands now. All manufacturers have a competitive offering, some of which have actually won users back from Sony. With the a7 IV, Sony had a dilemma that has haunted other brands like Canon, and that meme that Casey from Camera Conspiracies never tires of using. So how do you update a successful camera whilst meeting a competitive price point and not cannibalising the sales of your top tier products? I thought it would be good to look at how Sony have handled this dilemma compared to Canon and Nikon. We'll take a look at each manufacturer's latest offering at this price point to see how they compare and help make an informed choice. And we'll also ask whether you should upgrade your a7 III. Let's look at sensor and processor. Sony have upgraded the sensor to 33 megapixels, and on paper it seems more is better. But most photographers know that there's more to image quality than megapixels. You only need 8 megapixels to make a 4K video. It's more about pixel size, pitch, sensor construction and image processing. This means that you need to look at what the pairing of the sensor and the processor can do to really compare. The R6 is the lowest megapixels, but this is the same sensor from the flagship 1DX3 and with the same Digi-X processor, which has revolutionised the R5, R6 and now the R3. I don't really think that megapixels should be your deciding factor. Also, the readout speed at 55 milliseconds for the Sony a7 IV is particularly slow compared to the Canon R6 at 18 milliseconds. I expect the Sony will suffer worse rolling shutter. Canon don't get enough credit for the sensor they've developed. An 18 millisecond readout from a non-stacked sensor is truly amazing, although stacked sensor technology is capable of a much faster readout, like the 5 milliseconds on the Sony A1. But that's in a different league. Now looking at ISOs. The Canon R6 has a higher native ISO, and results show that at higher ISOs it performs better in tests than the Nikon or Sony. Though generally the BSI sensor on the Nikon and Sony perform better than Canon at the lower ISOs. Now looking at frames per second. The Canon R6 outperforms the others here. In fact, the Sony a7 IV seems to have got worse in this regard, and the frame rate drops to 5 frames per second when shooting RAW. Now looking at autofocus. The Sony a7 IV is much improved over the a7 III and will likely be a better match for Canon. But the Canon R6 still has more detecting points and a higher overall sensor coverage. The Canon also focuses down to a much lower level, useful for those with f11 lenses. Now looking at buffer. The Sony a7 IV is the winner here again, with 823 raw images, but this is at a reduced rate of 5 frames per second, which gives time for the buffer to clear. The Canon R6 achieves 240 shots at a sustained 20 frames per second. Now looking at card slots. Having two identical slots is what I personally prefer. The Canon manages to produce its 4K 60 full readout on a UHS 2 card, though the Sony has a CF Type A that claims compatibility with UHS 2, effectively giving it two similar cards. However, the CF Type A cards are prohibitively expensive. And now we're looking at video specs. Canon has the headline spec here, with 4K 60 effectively full frame. The crop is minimal at 1.05, and it's oversampled from 5.1K, with no line skipping. The new A7 IV is heavily cropped, something that Canon used to suffer from. However, it is downsampled from 7K, and Sony do usually have better compression algorithms, so I expect they'll squeeze out better quality in the real world. Now looking at IBIS. Canon still has the edge here. Their stability works in sync with the lens, and gives up to 8 stops of stability. Sony has managed a half-stop improvement over the A7 III, but some testers are reporting seeing issues and claim it's actually worse than the A7 III. I'm quoting Tony Northrop here. Now looking at the LCD. Nikon managed to take the lead here for the first time, at least in terms of resolution, with its 2.1 million dot, although their screen isn't fully articulating. Sony have finally ditched that poor 0.9 million dot LCD, only to replace it with a slightly less poor 1.04 million dot LCD. But at least we're no longer reminded of that MC Hammer track. You can't touch this. I'd play a clip here, but I don't want a copyright strike. So the good news is that the Sony menu and touchscreen is now system-wide, and no longer limiting to only focus points. Now let's look at the battery. Sony is well known for battery life with the NP-FZ100, but strangely, it's got worse with a drop of 130 shots over the A7 III, meaning the Canon R6 is a close second now. And this is a big turnaround for Canon, who used to struggle in this area. Now looking at weight. Weight is often the reason given for users switching to mirrorless, and all of these cameras are under 700 grams, so there's not much between any of them in weight terms. Now we'll look at price. As expected, Sony have increased their price here. I guess they were using the A7 III as a loss leader to attract people to the brand. It certainly looked underpriced for the specification. However, it looks like Nikon are using price to win back customers. Just look at the pricing on the Z9 that's just been announced. Incredible specs for just under $5,500. The A7 III was the camera that ate Nikon and Canon's lunch when it was released in 2018. However, in 2021, the situation has changed. With competitive offerings from Nikon and Canon, there's no longer a reason to jump brand. So the A7 IV is unlikely to convert people to Sony the way that the A7 III did, and this leaves Sony with the need to appeal to A7 III owners to upgrade. Has Sony done enough with this update? It certainly looks like Sony have had to hold back on specs to meet a price point, and topping out at 10 frames per second with a 1.5 crop at 4K 60 are where Sony made the tough choices. I'm not sure this is a compelling upgrade for A7 III owners. The A7 IV is a competitive offering, and the improved autofocus and video improvements will no doubt tempt some A7 III and possibly A7R owners to upgrade, as will the new menu and touch functions. But this is no A7 III moment for Sony. It will not capture the market and users like that camera did. This is a new phase in the mirrorless market, and Sony are no longer dominating the way they did. It's great for the industry to see technical advances in processors and sensors being made, and it's great for the consumer to see 3 strong competitors constantly battling to produce a more appealing camera. Why not try this video next, which YouTube thinks will interest you? Or perhaps this one might suit you better. And thanks for watching Rumour Has It. I hope you'll be back soon.